talk about today is how bicycles create health and wealth. Bicycling, if you look up in the dictionary, it's a human-powered vehicle that generates two byproducts, health and wealth. That may not be what the dictionary says, but that's what we're going to focus on today. The health benefits are obvious. There's been study after study that shows communities that get people out to bike ride are healthier communities. The quality of life is better. The insurance costs go down. It's a very obvious relationship between bicycles and health. What's maybe not as obvious is the connection between wealth, the economic benefits of riding the bike to the cities as well as the folks that ride them. These are some bullet points of just statements about the benefits of bike riding. Bicycle tourism generates $71 billion annually across the United States. Bicyclists, when they travel, this is a Missouri study, they tend to stay 3 days longer than somebody that would drive to a location, and they tend to spend about $240 more. So again, it's a big impact if you can get those cyclists into your town. The Great Allegheny Pass is a trail. It's about 30 miles in Pennsylvania. It starts in Pittsburgh, I think, but it goes west 30 miles. This is one that's always been used as a test case across the nation. It costs about $80 million to construct that trail and get it connected all the way across. But now they generate $75 million annually in economic benefits to the region. And that's in the trail towns that are along that corridor and the cities at either end of the major metropolitan centers. So again, it's a proven fact that you get more bicyclists, your economy improves. There's some basic facts. Across the country, owning a car and operating a car costs about $9,000 a year by the time you factor in gas, repairs, car loans and everything. To own a bike, it averages $900. So millennials and the younger generation, they're seeing that. They really don't want to drive a car. They don't want to own a car. They don't want to try to fix a car. They want to Uber anything that's a long distance. But other than that, they want to live close to town so they can walk and ride. And they invest that $8,100 difference in what the speaker talked about today, getting experiences, going to travel, spending that money on other items. There was also a bike lane study, so the first part of this is probably more trails, but bike lanes generate a 4-to-1 return on investment for the cities that put them in. So dialing this down to Kansas. Kansas in 2017 had 1.35 million commuters. 96% of those, the big part of the chart there, 96 either drove in a car by themselves or carpool. 2% of that 1.3 actually walked to work, and then that left 1% that rode a bike, took a taxi, or took some other form of transit. So you can see this as one or two things. One, you can see that there's not a lot of use of the bicyclists today, but you can also see that that's a great pool of people that we can get to change their mode of travel from cars to bikes to get some benefits for the economy. And it really doesn't take much to make a significant impact. Minnesota and Oregon, they're very aggressive, very progressive with bicycling. Their percentages are 2% bicycling, and in Oregon, which is the mecca of all bicycling, it's 4%. So it wouldn't take much for Kansas to go from way down on the list of bicycling to way up on the list. So that takes care of the commuters, but what about the recreational riders? That's another source of economic development. And in 2015, based on the state's park program, they saw that mountain biking had 18,000 users, trail bike riding had 25,000, and on-road cycling had 26,000. So those numbers are fairly consistent with the commuters. It was about 25 to 28,000 on that slide. So you can see there's a great baseline of bicycling and bicyclists in Kansas, and it's a matter of getting those dollars from them going forward. So with that baseline, we're looking at the pool of people that want to ride bikes but can't because of lack of access to a facility or lack of access to a connected facility. But really, there are commuters out there of all ages, all sexes, all types. You've got the millennials, like I said, who don't want to own a car. You've got some of the senior citizens who are retired and maybe working part-time. They've got health issues and they've realized that they don't maybe have time to work out or no interest in working out, but if they ride their bike to and from work, even in the summer months, it'll have a great impact on their health. And the younger generation, like I said, they're all excited about bike facilities. And then the tourism and the recreational dollars, those are, again, a great pool to pull from. We've got families that travel, they want to go see the world's biggest ball of yarn, and now they're putting the bike racks on their cars. They want to be a biking family. Their vacations are a little more interactive when they can take their family out and get out the bikes and ride down the trail or ride through the park. There's a big group of seniors that like to go on wine rides or just go out for a 3-day ride and come back. So there's a need for facilities that accept these folks. And really the key with all of this is to get more riders, you've got to improve what you have. So you need to improve your bicycle facilities. So like on this slide here, this is the trolley track trail in Kansas City. It originally was an aggregate trail, and then they got a lot of ridership. A lot of people were excited about the trail, so they paved this section with asphalt to make it a little more all-weather. Then they added the benches and the trash cans and the wayfinding signs, and all of this was growing that ridership. The more you added these facilities, the more you added these amenities, the more riders you got, the more requests you got to expand the facility and make it better. And the same thing holds true with bike lanes and bike facilities on the street. Again, in Kansas City, Missouri, they had a bad reputation for a long time because they would build a quarter-mile of bike lane here, and then 3 miles later another quarter-mile of bike lane, but it wasn't connected. So the public would see these bike lanes and nobody riding on it, and they would see that as validation that it was wasted time, wasted money. Now Kansas City's been much more aggressive and proactive about making these connections, and now they've got a ton of bicyclists, and there's a bike share program. It's adding station after station. It's growing by leaps and bounds because of all the ridership that they're seeing out there. So the key is, if you build it, they will come. And they will complain that it took you so long to get it built, no matter how quickly you get it out. We're going to go through a couple examples, a couple test cases. This is the river market area in Kansas City. This is in the north side of the city. It was along the riverfront. This area was blighted. Blighted was probably a kind term because it was in bad shape. Nobody went to that part of the city. It was drug-ridden, crime-ridden, just a bad area of the city. And it connected to the West Bottoms. West Bottoms were where the stockyards were. They got flooded all the time. Again, another blighted part of the city, big buildings with nobody in them. There was a group that got together, KC River Trails, Inc., and it was an ad hoc group. It wasn't formed by the city. It was formed by local activists that wanted to see something done to these areas. And they knew they didn't have the power to change the landlords or the property owners, but what they could do was use some of that riverfront right-of-way to put in a trail. So they devised a plan to put a trail that went from basically the east side of Kansas City to the heart of Kansas City, Kansas, so it was a bi-state trail. And anyone that's worked on projects that split state line or city limits, you know how frustrating it can be because you've got these animosities that are built up and lack of cooperation between the cities. Well, this group was steadfast and they developed this trail. And because of this trail and other items of urban renewal, the riverfront is now a booming area. This area has, you can't see from this picture, but there's a lot of shops on this stretch of the road. This road here, I think it's 5th Street, it has shops all along it. The streetcar now circles this area. They built the river market area. There's lofts, there's new businesses moving in, and it's just booming. The West Bottom area is an industrial-based area. It's getting lofts and more industry to come down there, so it's really, bicycling helped renew that area and really raise property values. Another example that bicycling really helps is the Katy Trail State Park. This is the one in Missouri. It's one of the longest rail-to-trail projects in the nation. It starts up here in St. Louis, goes along the Missouri River, comes down to Windsor, and it ends right now in Clinton, Missouri. So that's the Katy Trail. It's about 238 miles long, and it's about 29 years old. So that Great Allegheny Pass project that is up in Pittsburgh, that one's much older than this one, so we're still in the young phase of this trail. But it's already generated 400,000 visitors per year. 85% of those visitors bike that trail, at least some part of it. And that impact from those visitors is $18.5 million to the state of Missouri. That's economic dollars for the city, or for the state. And based on that impact, Missouri sees an 18-to-1 return on investment. So there's not a lot of things in this world that you're going to get that kind of return on your investment. But it's shown in study after study that bicycling will generate these types of returns. As the trails has grown in popularity, the trail towns along these routes have figured out that there's money to be gained by connecting into this trail. And there's towns like Rocheport and Columbia that do everything they can to facilitate the needs of the cyclists. This is a Trailside Cafe in Rocheport. But in 2012, there was $8.2 million spent in these trail towns. And I guarantee you that number's probably gone up significantly or even doubled since that time, because the trail has just become so popular. There was an issue with the trail, though. You can see on this map, this is a population density map. The green areas are the rural, less dense areas, and the areas in orange and red are where the population is more dense. And you can see here that St. Louis was connected to the Katy Trail, and they've got a great trail network to get them from the heart of the city to it. And then it comes through here, there's Columbia, Missouri, and then it stops over here in Clinton. But you can see Kansas City's not connected. That's one of the biggest population centers in the area, but we weren't connected to the trail. So there was an opportunity for the Department of State Parks to purchase or acquire a piece of the Rock Island Trail. The Rock Island Railroad was essentially abandoned. They can't call it abandoned because the other property owners can take it. So it was inactive. But the Parks Department was able to convert that to a rail trail, and it added 47 miles from Pleasant Hill up here at the north down to Windsor. So Windsor's kind of at the crossroads of the trails. And now the Missouri legislature is debating on whether to acquire the rest of the Rock Island to the east which would add another 144 miles of trail. So you've got 238 on the Katy, 47 miles here that are built, and then another 144, and maybe loop this back in. So you could have over 250 miles of trail connected in the state of Missouri. At Windsor, that crossroads where the two trails meet right now, it's another example of how you can get economic development from that. Kim Henderson owned she and her husband were trail riders, so they would go out from Windsor and ride the trail. They would always bump into folks that were looking for a place to stay, and they would say, "What's Windsor got for accommodations?" And she likes to say that she built a cabin that would sleep 6, and that gave the town of Windsor 7 beds to sleep in for people that were looking for a place to stay. So town of 3,000, they didn't have a hotel, they really didn't have a bed and breakfast. But after 3 years of that cabin, she's now got 4 cabins, and she's added, it's essentially 34 beds that are available. And she said even that's not enough. In addition to the lodging, the folks that ride the trail, sometimes they come in late at night, sometimes the weather's not conducive for a ride, so they're looking for something to do. So the town of Windsor is looking at the business community to come up with a bowling alley or a museum, something to get the families that come stay here that can't do anything because of the weather, a place to go out, have something to eat late, and have some of the amenities they expect. So they're booming, and they're talking about even adding more cabins. Windsor is right here. So this is the map of the state of Missouri with the Katy Trail in green, the Rock Island connection here in green, and this extension that they're looking at in red. I attended a market exploration workshop, and what that was a group of people that saw what happened in Windsor, and they wanted that for their own town. So there was a group that represented this part of the world, and it was city managers, contractors, economic development committees, social groups, and we had a meeting with probably 100 people, 150 folks at a big church in the Windsor area. And they were looking at ways to connect to the trail, and there's the town of Warsaw right here that's on the lake. They're a great lake community. They're on Truman Lake, so you can boat, fish. They've got great amenities, but they see the benefits of connecting to the Rock Island and the Katy. So they're working with the Corps of Engineers and local partners to get a trail stub that comes down to Warsaw. The group also realizes that they need to do something to pull a significant number of riders or give them something else to look at. So they're looking at trails that follow the old Butterfield stagecoach route and the old Pony Express route. And it basically comes through this part of the state, comes across just the southeast corner of Kansas, and then eventually goes all the way over to Phoenix, Arizona. So it could be a really significant national route. The other thing they've found out is there's cross-country bike routes, and those have been around for a long time, but they say there's about 1,000 riders every year that ride from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it comes in along 50 Highway here. So again, there's another group of bicyclists that need a place to stay, need some food to eat, need something exciting to look at on the trail. So that group is very ambitious and very aggressive, and I think it's going to pay off for them. I'll let Matt talk to you about the latest piece of the Rock Island, and that's the piece in Jackson County.
I'm going to grab the mic because I've been a little under the weather, and I don't know if I can project my voice that well. Is that okay? There we go. Okay, so my name is Matt Davis. I work for Jackson County, Missouri, which is the county which Kansas City is located in. And we purchased a railroad corridor, part of the Rock Island Rail Corridor that John has mentioned in 2016. The corridor that we purchased is about 18 miles long. And are you all familiar with the Kansas City area generally? So on the northern end of our corridor is kind of the Truman Sports Complex. And then on the kind of southeast end is Lee Summit, Missouri, so kind of the southeast part of the county. This railroad, although it is a former Rock Island Railroad, it was formerly owned by the Union Pacific. That's who we purchased it from. It is out of service, meaning it hasn't seen a train for about 40 years. But although it is out of service and you haven't, no trains have ran on it, it is considered an active freight railroad by the federal government. So interestingly enough, when we purchased the railroad, we actually became a Class 3 railroad carrier. Now, we don't have any intention of running freight on it. However, the leadership of Jackson County at the time felt that that was the best strategy for them to acquire. They wanted total control over the land itself, as well as, you know, if a freight carrier wanted to come back in, they wanted to have some control over, you know, allowing freight. I'll get on into the area a little bit more in just a moment, but does the clicker work, Todd?
The laser does, but not like
Okay. Well, before I move on to this next slide, just wanted to mention that this is a trail project. It's also a transit project. We have partnered with the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority to, you know, Jackson County is handling the trail portion of it, and the KCATA is handling a transit component of it. So the vision here is for, you know, in the future maybe light rail or some type of, you know, per-transit streetcar or something like that. But Lee Summit, this community in the southeast corner of our county, is one of the most rapidly growing communities in the Kansas City area, and so we want to be prepared for the future so we can provide transit service to those folks. If another thing I typically mention is, you know, when you look for corridors to build transportation projects, it's very, very difficult and very expensive, especially in urbanized areas. A lot of times, newer highways require purchasing, you know, all these homes and businesses and properties that are in the way and tearing them all out. So we saw this opportunity to purchase a railroad corridor and took advantage. And as it says there, yes, we hope to be the trail connection to the Katy Trail for the Kansas City region. So a little bit of history. This project has been in the works for a long, long time. There's been advocates in the Kansas City region that have been looking at the Rock Island for probably 20 years. People have really wanted to get Kansas City connected to the Katy Trail, and they viewed this as a great way to do so. In the early 20-teens, Jackson County leadership really had its eye on commuter rail and transit initiatives for Jackson County, and they did what's called an alternatives analysis, and this looks at different corridors throughout the region that could serve for light rail transit, things of that nature. This corridor was identified as a good transit corridor, so we partnered with the KCATA. That partnership was affirmed in 2015. That really allowed us to go forward with the purchase. It was a very expensive purchase, $52 million, which they are splitting with us and making it possible. And then in 2016, we purchased the corridor, and also that's when I was hired to kind of manage the trail portion of the project for the county. So, as I mentioned, Jackson County is handling the trail portion. Construction started in early 2018 on the trail. We've got about half of it completed. So, although we have about an 18-mile trail, only 14 miles of, although we have an 18-mile railroad corridor, we'll only be constructing a trail on about 14 miles of that. About 6.5 of those miles are completed, that's the south half. This is built mostly on the railroad bed. And we've got some other slides coming up, but we've done this to, because that's really the long, in the south half, they don't see transit coming for a long, long time. In the north half, we're building off the railroad bed. So we're actually building at a minimum of 25 feet off the rail bed. Sometimes it's as much as 50 feet off the rail bed. And that's demonstrated in these slides here. Because we're anticipating transit to come in the future, in those areas where it seems that transit is more imminent, we've avoided that prepared rail bed, that space where it'd be real easy to just build a train or another transitway, something like that. In the south section, kind of that first part that I was discussing, we've since completed. It's mostly on the rail bed. And just a real quick side note on this is, this is the typical rail trail construction that you think of. So for the Katy Trail in Missouri, and also for the the Flint Hills Nature Trail, these trails are built right on top of the rail bed. They make great trail surfaces because they don't exceed a 1% grade. So there's, imagine a freight train, right, pulling a huge heavy load across country. They can't pull up steep hills or go down steep hills. They've got to keep kind of a constant 1%. So that ballast, that surface that they're built upon is a great trail surface, and also great for a transit project in the future. So a little side note on that one. A little bit more about our corridor in our county. The Rock Island Rail Corridor, we're a half mile of the corridor. We've got 56,000 residents, about 26,000 jobs. It connects to many of the most kind of vibrant, interesting places in our region. Truman Sports Complex being one of them. Downtown Raytown, which is kind of a first-ring suburb, kind of one of the older suburbs in the Kansas City region. Has, seen probably a little bit better days, but are looking forward to how the trail can transform their kind of downtown area, things like that. I-470 in View High, which is an area near Lee Summit that's seeing a lot of development. And then Lee Summit, Missouri, which is a fast-growing suburb in the southeast portion of our region. Excuse me. Some other highlights, John mentioned several reasons why why we do these types of projects. And one of the main things is that you see associated with trails a premium on home prices. So, we have 3.5 to 11% here. You can find studies that cite much higher numbers, that cite 15, 17, 18%. We typically talk in that kind of 7 to 12 range, because I think that's more typical. John also showed an image of the trolley track trail earlier in the presentation. And it's kind of interesting because on the trolley trail, last summer I was riding the trolley trail, and I saw 2 for sale signs for homes. Homes actually back up to the trail. And there were 2 for sale signs along the trail, which I found very interesting because, they're advertising to people who are on the trail, and those people are thinking this trail is one of the greatest amenities of my home, and so we want to, we're showing that off, and I just think that's an attest to the power of trails, especially as it pertains to home values and desirability. As John mentioned in some of these his points earlier, cyclists, pedestrians, transit users, they spend more money when they go places like bars, restaurants, things of that nature. And they'll do it, they'll spend more money and they'll ride longer distances if they feel like they can, get there safely on a bicycle or as a pedestrian. They also save money. There's a public health kind of benefit to this type of project, and it's one of the prime drivers of why we do them. And yeah, as I mentioned, they're willing to spend extra time on that path because they feel safe. Folks in Lee Summit can ride on a 14-mile trail, or will be able to when we're done, to a Royals game, for example. And they can do that without having to cross busy streets. They don't have to get out on high speed, high capacity roadways and feel like they've are in danger of being hit by a car or something like that. And they can take their kids, and we want to create an amenity that folks of all ages and abilities can feel safe and comfortable using. These are several examples of other rail trails from around the region, and I think John hit on this too. A lot of these trail projects, ours included in Jackson County, are oftentimes in blighted areas. They're in places where there are a lot of industrial areas. They were former railroad yards. They're places that people kind of had used at one time, but no longer used due to various reasons, right? And so these spaces, as they've been converted into trail projects, have also kind of been reclaimed by a lot of the communities around them. And we see things like great public art, programmable space where folks can have festivals and street vendors and things of that nature. Here are a few examples. On the top left there, that's the left, that'd be your right. Pond City Market in Atlanta. There's a project called the Atlanta Beltline, and totally fits that bill. The vast majority of it is in blighted, kind of rundown areas. An urban planner with some vision saw that and said, we could really do something really positive and create a way for folks to move around Atlanta in a different way. And they've had just an overwhelming response of positivity. And all these really demonstrate that. In Charlotte, it's a rail trail. It runs parallel to a light rail line, goes through almost the entire city of Charlotte. The Katy Trail Ice House in Dallas, Texas. If you ever go to Dallas, I really recommend you hit this place up, and it's awesome. It's basically an outdoor beer garden patio. They've got a stage, great food. It's always packed. The trail goes right by their patio. Well, a little bit more. I'm going to, I'll hit this, but I'll come back to. Well, let me do this one first, actually, if you wouldn't mind. The next one. Thank you. So this is the image here is an area in downtown Raytown. It's a city in Jackson County that I mentioned earlier. It's a first-rate suburb. It was one of the original settlements in Jackson County. It was along the Oregon, Santa Fe, California trails. So I think it's probably been settled since the early 1800s. But it's a community that's had some issues and some struggles over time. We go right through their downtown area, which is kind of a historic downtown. Right by where our trail goes, there's actually a new brewery called Crane Brewing Company. So I have this vision, kind of like the Katy Trail Ice House, a place where folks can stop. They've been riding all day. They can stop and have a beer and a sandwich, and kind of refresh themselves, take a break. And so we're, as we look at our trailheads, we envision kind of a basic trailhead layout now, but we hope to work with local communities to program those spaces, to provide things like bike share, enhanced amenities. And I think if you go forward here, there's another image of Raytown. Oh, no. Anyway, but thinking of those, the Atlanta Beltlines and the Charlotte Rail Trails, and kind of reclaiming some of those spaces that were once, really vibrant, active places in our community, historic places, and kind of transitioning those back into what they used to be, or leveraging this investment to kind of improve those areas is something that we really look forward to. You had a slide there about KCATA. I'll just mention real briefly. This was one of the very early images that was created. I don't know that we're going to have a light rail station that pulls up right in front of Arrowhead. I think that'd be pretty cool, but I think that's a ways off. We were able to secure with our partnership in the ATA some other partnerships with railroads that could allow us to get from downtown, the area that John mentioned, the River Market, which is kind of the northern end of our streetcar line. So we could have a train all the way from River Market out to the Lee Summit area, including a stop at the Treatment Sports Complex. So this is something that could be transformational for our community. It's probably a long way off. It's going to take a lot of planning and investment and creativity and perseverance, but I think we're on the way, and yeah, thank you. And if you have questions, we'll answer them afterward. I think John's got some.
Well, yeah, I've got a couple more slides. We've spoken a lot about Missouri today. I wanted to show you some things that have gone on in Kansas and some opportunities there. This is a map of the Prairie Spirit Trail. Starts in Ottawa, heads south. This trail is a very popular trail for cycling, and Ottawa is building a square in their downtown to be an amenity and be a resource for the bicyclists. This is something that was started by a business owner. This wasn't a city council person or a mayor. This was a business owner who said, we've got this great opportunity that's linked into that. So the whole project, I think, was $2.5 million. They got some federal funds through KDOT to build it. That was kind of dreamed up and started with a grassroots effort. So as you leave here, if you've got an amenity in your town, if you're in one of these towns along the corridor or the other corridors.
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got the Flint Hills Nature Trail. That's various segments are rideable by bikes. That's kind of the next big thing for Kansas. We've got the Kansas Rail Trails. Again, those are just starting. Those are beginning to start up. But take advantage of that. If you're in a larger town, Wichita, Topeka, take advantage of the on-street system. Be an advocate to get those built. I know we've got a lot of contractors at the conference and suppliers. The more projects we get out on the street, the better the economy is for you and your bottom line. So be an advocate because it helps the community at whole. And then because I knew we weren't talking to cities or counties, I wanted to show some construction for the contractors in the room. This is a trail construction. This is an aggregate trail over at GeoGrid. This is common for the type of trails we build in the Kansas City region. The clays we build on are pretty mushy, and we end up with some soft clays and fat clays that we've got to run through. So the grid really helps distribute the loading even during construction. And here we've got an asphalt trail and a concrete trail. The trail contractors are getting pretty good at doing a slip line on the concrete, and of course they just use the paver for the asphalt trail. This is a 135-foot long pedestrian bridge that is going over a creek in Shawnee. The truck had to back up a quarter-mile of twisting, turning curves through these types of dense woods to get to the site. So what they did was they had this bulldozer and they hooked a chain to this. So the curves they couldn't make, he just slid the tires across and got to where they were going. They did blow out one tire, but they were able to get the bridge back where they needed to go. So a lot of these trail projects take some ingenuity, not only for the design, but how things get built. So again, there's a great resource for a community and a great resource for your economy. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. That's all right.
I have a question. We're big advocates of bicycling and what have you in various communities, take our bikes with you. The big concern we have when we go to places, we park our bikes in a retail area, restaurants and things, and let our bikes there for a while. As we've had this happen, you come back and your bike's gone. It's been stolen. What are you doing to alleviate or reduce that risk of where people can securely put their bicycles and those bicycles would not be stolen or vandalized or what have you? Because bicycles are getting more and more expensive all the time.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, from my perspective, at places like trailheads along the Rock Island, for example, one thing that we're trying to do, first of all, I work for Jackson County, Missouri, and so we have a pretty robust parks department. We are not necessarily a park, however, our park rangers patrol our trailhead locations.
Mhm.
And so they go to all the trailheads multiple times throughout the day, throughout Jackson County. So that'll be happening. We'll have actual presence at trailhead locations randomly throughout the day. That's one thing. Another thing that we're doing is, in places like downtown Raytown, places where we have businesses and chambers of commerce and downtown associations and things of that nature, we're trying to find partnerships with organizations, and that can be with one or many or a variety of arrangements, to do things like CIDs or to include our trail or our trailheads in CIDs, because these communities do view them as something that benefits their community, an economic driver, things of that nature. So we've tried to work with our local communities to kind of partner on maintenance, security, things like that. So that's another way that we can do it. And these CIDs, which is a community improvement district for anybody who doesn't know, it's typically it's a very, very small taxing district that raises money for things like minor infrastructure improvements, security presence, and trash pickup and things of that nature. So it's a way for those areas to kind of generate some income that can then be used for different things. But just one other thing that we try and do is provide good bike racks in the locations that people want to park their bikes, because that's a major obstacle too. More and more people are riding their bikes, whether it's in urban areas or on trails or whatever it may be, and there's kind of a lag on bike infrastructure, bike racks, all those types of things.
Right.
So
There is.
so we're trying to work, like, for example, we work with an organization in Kansas City called Bike Walk KC, and they have a program where they get they call it a nonprofit rate. It's basically cost for bike racks, and businesses or organizations can partner with them to facilitate fitting out an area with bike racks, and they can customize them and do different colors and all kinds of stuff. So, if we can do things like that and provide good places to lock their bikes, as opposed to lock to a chain link fence, or doing things that are, it's great if you have a really expensive, strong, unbreakable lock, and then you lock it to a chain link fence and somebody just cuts the fence, So we're working on those types of things, and it's a concern. And obviously bike theft is, the more people ride bikes, the more people are going to steal bikes too. It's kind of, one of those things, so.
As you do your planning, please include some of those in your planning for
Oh, yeah.
secure places to park your bikes, secure your bikes, or have.
Absolutely.
If
All
you like
our
parking your car, you
trailheads-
go to a parking lot, you got to pay them $5 to park your car. Okay, for a bike, make it 50 cents or $1 for a family, and it's in a supervised, or you get
Yeah.
a ticket, and they have bike racks, and it's there, it's color coded, whatever, and you have to have your ticket to get your bike back out again. That'd be fine
Yeah,
with me.
no,
I
that's
don't mind,
fantastic. They call them, I think they call them like bike barns.
What's
or
that?
Something like that.
Barns, and you can actually get bike lockers.
Yeah, bike lockers. So, yeah, there's like, there's an office that's it's our MPO, Municipal Planning
Mhm.
Organization downtown in Kansas City, and they have bike lockers there. If you go places like the really progressive cycling cities, places like Portland, things like that, they'll actually have, at some of their big transit stations, they'll have a building. It's like a shed, and you can put money in and punch in a code and put your bike in there and
Yeah.
lock it for a whole day. So I fully support that, and
So are there places like down the Kansas City Plaza area for bike?
nothing like that.
Okay.
Nothing as progressive as a bike locker on the plaza. They do have, we have bike share on the plaza now.
Yes, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and we've got, unfortunately,
Or
there's
if in
really
the
no.
Power and Light District or someplace like that, you
Yeah.
go back and forth. And
Yeah, Power and Light's got some good new bike racks about the plaza. I'm an advocate of, I'd say take cars out of the plaza. I'd say let's get more people, make the plaza pedestrian zone as far as I'm concerned. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
Park in front of the garage and then go walk or ride a bike.
Exactly,
Works for me,
yeah,
yes.
So yeah, you know, I think those types of things, we're gonna see them becoming more common over the next, you know, 10 years or whatever, as time goes on. But, you know, it's just it's kind of a learning curve right now for a lot of folks.
Sure, I mean, I can see things like, okay, cycle to shop at the plaza.
Right.
An event invites bicyclists to come to the plaza for a day, and then vendors down, or retailers would offer discounts to everybody who rides a bike to the plaza.
Yeah, yeah.
Use that money to then
Do something.
have a secure place
Right,
where they can store their bikes and things like that, so.
100% on board with you. Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Any other questions?
Can I mention one thing really quick about bike tourism?
Sure.
I don't know if we're going over time or not, but you guys know about the Dirty Kansas bike race? The Dirty Kansas is an event, excuse me, the Dirty Kansas is an event out of Emporia, Kansas. It's a gravel bicycle race. They also have, for lack of a better term, kind of like fun ride. I mean, it's not, you know, they have events that you can participate in that aren't races, put it that way. But Emporia has basically molded a big part of their economy around this event, and they accommodate thousands and thousands of people in for one weekend out of this bike event. And I've done it 3 times, and it's phenomenal. You know, downtown Emporia has been literally transformed because of it. They've saved historic buildings. There's new businesses operating down there. I mean, you literally have to book your hotel room before the thing is even announced for the next year. So there are Kansas communities that really have seen a boon from bicycle tourism, and I'm sure if there are, if any folks have questions or wanted to explore that in any capacity, that would be a really good way to start a central Kansas community that would have a lot of experience in that field. So just thought I'd throw it out there.
I had a question. About 8 years ago in Lawrence, Kansas, I was working at a credit union, and we did like 3% bicycle loans instead of car loans.
Wow.
Which was a cool idea, but we only had about 3 or 4 people do it probably.
Yeah.
And just kind of thinking about, you know, the next coming couple of years, have you guys seen any or worked with any companies that have done, like, you know, you do X amount of work and you get a bike, or, you know, like some sort of an incentive like that? Has that marketing worked for anybody, or have you seen anybody successfully, you know, give out bikes or promote this through business, you know, through just
Sure.
basic marketing outreach or things?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of companies doing that. But the Mid-America Regional Council does have a Green Commute Challenge, where you track how many people ride their bike or walk to work or take a bus to work. The goal is to reduce the carbon footprint,
Right.
but really it has a side benefit, and it shows people that, oh, I could ride my bike to work, and I kind of enjoyed it. So there's a lot of that going on, but I haven't heard of it.
So John doesn't know this about me, but I actually worked in that program. I worked for Mark in the rideshare program.
Thank you.
For 2.5 years.
All right.
And
a little bit about it.
And we worked with a number of local companies, Kansas City area companies, and the goal of that program is to get folks out of their cars, or it's to basically walk more to work or to lunch or to meetings, bike more to those things, use carpool, use transit, things of that nature. So that was how we operated. And we would get we worked with folks like the Royals and the Chiefs and the Zoo and other organizations around Kansas City to provide gifts for folks that would do that. We would have raffles for participants. But we also worked with a lot of companies that would give benefits to their employees who would do these types of things. And I mean, a lot of times what I saw that was the most successful was not giving awards, but providing basic amenities to people who wanted to do that. So providing a bike locker, that was a big one. Providing a safe place to lock your bike indoors, not outdoors. Because you'd have people that would come in the winter or in poor weather conditions and they didn't want to leave their bike outside. The other one was providing showers and lockers to people. That was huge. You know, I would hear people who were bike commuters that would say, I just want to ride my bike to work and I don't want to be gross all day. So whatever we can do, I don't need a prize. I just need a place to clean myself up, you know, in the morning. And so those types of things go really a long way. You know, there's so many barriers to folks using bicycles as transit or using transit period, that anything that companies can do to make that easier is a really big step in the right direction. So basically it's reducing barriers. The federal government has transit subsidies, and I think it just got cut again, of course, but a lot of commuters in bigger markets, places like DC, New York, and places like that, will get, their companies will use transit subsidies, so they'll basically give a tax break to people who use transit or who bike. And nobody really uses that in our region, in Kansas City region, I should say, because of the low mode share of bikers and transit users. But that's something that is available. You know, those are kind of the main things that I would suggest. There's probably more that we could do as well. I think personally also having the infrastructure available and having people feel safe, you know, a protected bike lane, for example, you know, or a facility where someone doesn't feel like they're in constant danger of their life.
Right.
You know, I mean, again, it's reducing barriers. So if we can make people feel safer, then we can help them choose something different than being a single occupancy vehicle driver every single day. But it's hard, and it takes time, it takes investment, you have to get public input and, you know, and buy-in, and it's all a process. You know? And even some of the most progressive places in the bike world, you know, still see lots and lots of pushback. So,
yeah, it's gotten a lot better here in the last 10 or so years. Because we used to ride, there was a time when we rode every night downtown, and, you know, from the east side to downtown Wichita, people would just, you know, floor it by you and throw cans at you and all kinds of stuff, and I haven't seen that in a long time, so that's good. But
yeah,
always room for improvement.
Yeah, I think the attitude is changing, you know, but yeah, we still got a ways to go.
Right.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll turn you loose for lunch. Thank you for sitting through us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.